So I'm going to open for one round of reflections, questions. Very brief, each person. Joachim, not possible?
Great session, great material. Two reflections. I want to applaud Tony Rinaudo's work and contribution to the conference. Last year was published a first comprehensive cost-benefit analysis of Great Green Wall, the African Union's Sahel program. And it came out extremely positive, extremely positive. So I think what's needed for further scaling up is not only engaging governments, but private sector finance. I have a question to you, Mark. Are we taking the trees for granted? Are we taking them too much for granted? I yesterday hinted to the baobab trees disease problem. What does science of your institute say about climate change threatening plant health of trees and forests? It's not only the land expansion. Can you illuminate on that? Because a lot of what we are talking about hinges on healthy forests.
Thanks, Joachim. Volker's next to ask a question of Tony. Thanks.
It's a question for Tony. Can you hear me? Been nice to see you. Hi. And in the last 3.5 years, we were working together in Africa on our movie, The Forest Maker. You said once a line I'll never forget, sitting under a tree in Maradi district in Niger. You said, with the right methods, Africa could feed itself. I went, incredible, no. And you said, yes, actually, Africa could feed the world. Given that still 70% of farmers people live on the countryside, at least in the Sahel zone in these 11 states, you insisted that as small farm holders, they are the ones who could save the world and who could provide food, not only for Africa, by bringing trees into the mix, agriculture plus forestry, agroforestry. I wonder if you could expand on that. Your presentation was so rushed, I thought you did not quite get to the point.
Thank you, Volker. So at the moment, production is extremely low. People are using quite backward methods, and they don't have access to markets or fair prices, and their yields are barely subsistence. In many places, they're simply not even feeding themselves. Just by working with nature alone, those yields can at least double. And then where technologies can be brought in, improved seed, micro irrigation, different fertilizer techniques, then yields could be increased yet again. So I think that their productivity is they've hardly scratched the surface.
Thanks, Tony. Anna, just one more question, and then I'll give Carlo and Mark an opportunity to respond. And Tony, if you have any further comments. Anna?
As an introduction to my question, I just want to point out that often we present indigenous science and science as opposite. But talking about Germany, Baron von Humboldt traveled in Latin America. He was in touch with many shamans, many local scientists. He learned a lot from them and from mestizo scientists. And in 5 years, he's the root of the concept of ecology, which was coined by Haeckel, but Haeckel is a disciple of Humboldt. And all these science, and you were speaking about reparations yesterday, Edgar, which I think it's important because extraction has also been epistemological. And all these indigenous science is embedded in the concept of science, but without ever crediting its indigenous sources. So first, I would like to question that binary. And it's important to acknowledge the indigenous contribution to science. And I guess that the segue is the question that of an issue that really is important and we haven't discussed yet, which is the issue of copyright as we develop these bioeconomies. Who is going to appropriate the genomes of the biowealth of Amazonia? Who's going to benefit from it? Who's going to have the patent? How do we guarantee indigenous rights over all these biological wealth as we produce bioplastics, biopackaging, all the potential economies that you mentioned, which I do believe are the future? So that, I think, is also another important thing that we need to discuss. How do we avoid extracting knowledge and disenfranchising indigenous peoples once again? Okay.
To pick up on that last question, just in terms of the larger issues related to data and the digitization of data and so forth. But unfortunately, John, we're going to have to close it here and then just have a set of responses from our speakers. Okay, sorry about that. Mark, please.
Thank you, Professor Brown, for that is the defining question for forest in the future. And paradoxically, not many people are talking about that. It looks more fashionable to talk only about planting trees, but no one is really talking about helping our forests to adapt to climate change, natural disturbances, managing better and protecting what we already have. And the latest science is worrying. It has been already for the last 20 years. When I started to do scientific research, we anticipated some of the problems, especially with forest fires in Europe and other parts of the world. But basically what we are seeing now is that unfortunately many of our forests will not be able to adapt to the new environmental conditions. It will not be fast enough, so we need to help them through assisted migration, emphasizing natural regeneration, enhancing biodiversity, and there are different methods how to do it. The Amazon is very worrying. The latest science also shows that the Amazon forest is losing the resilience. And if we cross the fact that we lose 20% of the Amazon, we can enter into a tipping point that will bring the tropical forest into savanization. Already now, latest scientific studies have shown that the Congo forests are having the same net sink as the Amazon forest, and they are half the size. And still scientists, they don't have an answer. We are wondering why this is happening. So there are, as I mentioned before, the most worrying part is not what we know, but what we don't know yet. But you are totally right that we are having the trees and forests for granted, and we should also be aware that forests are absorbing CO2. But as soon as a natural disturbance happens, immediately all the carbon that they have been absorbing is released to the atmosphere. So this could have really an accelerating warming effect. I mentioned before, Canada's forests for 20 years have not been being a net sink, but a source of CO2 due to forest fires and other natural disturbances. Deforestation is 10 million hectares per year, but the forests that are being affected by forest fires are many more millions. And this has also huge impacts in terms of CO2, mercury, and other greenhouse emissions. So I think this is the key question. We need really a Marshall Plan, not only in Europe, but globally, to really support our forests to adapt to the new conditions.
Edgar, I need to intervene here as an Earth system scientist. I mean, we should not become desperate about this because what we are creating involuntarily is a carboniferous climate, so to speak. I showed you yesterday, but the lushest and greenest period of vegetation on Earth was 300 million years ago. What we are doing now with CO2 is we are providing a higher temperature, a more vigorous water cycle on Earth, so there will be more evaporation and precipitation, and a higher level of CO2. These are the three ideal conditions to have a thriving biosphere, actually. Yeah? So it's all about transition management because we are creating precisely the conditions we need on Earth to draw down carbon by the help of nature.
I will ask our other two panelists to do their final remarks. Carlo?
Sure. Well, first of all, I like very much what John was saying a moment ago about, yes, we're going back to the Carboniferous. Unfortunately, we don't know how compatible it was from a climate point of view with human life. But certainly, yes, our planet, if you take the long view and look at our planet has seen it before. And actually from there started all those natural processes that brought us to where we are today. So certainly there's going to be some interesting feedback that are moving us back in this direction. My quick point, the quick thing I want to say is that digital can really help us to better manage and understand not only cities, as we were saying before, but also forests. Somehow in the world we are getting to now today a digital twin, a twin for our cities, a twin for forests, for the planet as a whole. And those networks, those digital networks can be part of what can help us monitor better things. It's digital network with sensors and the actuators at the other end can help us better understand, monitor what is going on, and also enact change. That applies to cities, that applies to natural systems. And just to finish, I think we should more and more look at the two as part of the same equation, the convergence of the world of the artificial and the world of the natural, kind of a co-evolution of the two looking forward.
Thanks so much. Tony, final word?
Thank you. So I guess just to repeat, a plea to restore the billions of hectares of degraded land. And secondly, let's mobilize, enable, and empower the millions of people whose livelihoods are linked to the health of that land. Thank you.
Perfect note to end. Thank you.